Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. All right, just some logistics out of the way first. Today, we're doing the transition from Solution Manager to Cloud ALM webinar. Any content we share here today, IT Conductor's opinion, my own opinion, they're not opinion of SAP or anybody else. And so I just want to have a disclaimer there. And we will also go through some real life situation as well as some live demo and towards the end of the presentation. So hang around and we'll get started now. Okay, so again, welcome. My name is IT Conductor's CEO Lin Nguyen and co-founder, and I've been around SAP over 30 years. So hopefully able to share some information, useful steps, and also best practices. We've been doing the SAP topics for over many years now, and this is one of those transitional period where SAP is releasing the new tools. And so today we'll cover what is the reason why you need to start looking at Cloud ALM, Solution Manager, kind of what it's been, what it's doing for you, and where you need to go in terms of planning. And also look out for challenges and gaps in to expect so that you go in fully aware, to plan for resources, etc. We'll talk about some of the roadmap items, where they are today, where they plan to, enhance the product or solution out there, what's on the roadmap and the timelines, etc. We'll also look at for planning purposes, the sizing, how to plan for the costs, the multiple tiers, etc., and what you get into scenario there, and then we'll go through some real world type of lesson learned. We'll share. IT Conductor has been around for over 10 years now, so we are in the kind of a system management, lifecycle management. So we can talk about some of these, how it applies to customers and what we see today versus our experience with other platforms, etc. Okay, and we'll have some Q&A as well. And we also, from SAP standpoint, it's a vendor product, so they obviously open up the third party where it's appropriate to integrate with the solution because it's not quite ready for everything that you may be using today in your enterprise. So SAP themselves are ending support for Solution Manager. It's been around over 10 years. And if you've been through Solution Manager in the early days, 7.1, 7.2, the maintenance support is ending 2027. So no more development. They essentially are promoting the next generation product, which is Cloud ALM. The extended support is 2020 through 2030. So it kind of aligns with some of the S4, you might hear the timeline. And so if you are planning an S4 upgrade, whether you're planning to migrate to cloud or RISE, etc., this is something that they are encouraging you to kind of onboard as well in parallel with the project, right? And part of the reason is Solution Manager is aged out. If you've struggled through that and been through the whole challenge and you've got it working, it's not keeping up with newer applications and newer cloud deployment scenario. So one of the things we have seen is that customers, who have Solution Manager start to not invest any more time configuring it or maintaining it or managing it. And so that's one of the reasons that SAP feels like they are introducing the next generation of solution tools. So what are some of the benefits for Cloud ALM? Obviously, they are pushing kind of Fiori type cloud native tools, and you can obviously sign up. It's a tenant on BTP, essentially. You can get up and running in terms of a cloud tenancy there, your own instance on hosted environment in SAP Cloud. It's really out of the box, geared towards more the newer generation application. So if you're running S4, whether it's on-prem or cloud, it's you do the add-in, you get it up and running, you connect it to the cloud environment, and everybody should be now kind of familiar with the Fiori type UI5 interface. And so they're trying to kind of get that into the same operational mode so you're familiar with that user experience. And then obviously, because there are no more updates on the Solution Manager, most of that now is going to go to more like BTP. You are going to get probably quarterly push from SAP, whether you like it or not. So for Cloud ALM, for them is to, I guess, reduce the maintenance required for the on-prem software of Solution Manager. The other things they're trying to do is because of clean core push with S4, you have Cloud ALM trying to get implementation best practices. If you hear about Activate projects, you've got fit to standard business process that they're trying to introduce in the core business applications. So Cloud ALM will have those scenarios where you've got those, let's say you got the order to cash, they may have already metrics built in so that they will feed some of the business process. The other thing is more about collaboration, more between different projects. If you're doing change management, you're doing tests, automation, you're doing some of these other areas that about a life cycle management. That's built into some of the core features of Cloud ALM. And out of the box, I would say most people would probably do the health monitoring, right? Because that's the core feature functionality that everybody's familiar with. First, I need to get some visibility into my environment. So we see that as out of the box where they focus initially on. Some of the other things are still coming along. It's not quite ready. Some things, and I'll show you later. I mean, you try to click on something like change management to configure transport. You know, actually you get error. You don't even know why, who to go to. So one of the things, again, why SAP is pushing you to Cloud ALM is they are trying to take the next step. So we have a resource here, which basically an SAP published document, or they have a page on Cloud ALM. I will show that as well a little bit later. So we've been playing around with Cloud ALM for probably over last 6 months. Some of our customers started asking, they started playing around with it. And I would say that some of the challenges early on we're finding out is that SAP themselves are admitting that Cloud ALM, in fact, the documentation says if you are heavily like a mid-sized to large company, you have a large footprint on-prem legacy system, maybe SAP on anything like Oracle or DB2. It's not quite ready for Cloud ALM. In fact, they don't even support a lot of that out of the box. A lot of things that are out of the box are more like S4. So there's a hybrid legacy landscape support that they are saying if you are heavily still on-prem and still running a lot of the vast number of SAP applications, you are better off currently to run SAP Solution Manager with the Focus Run solution. So Focus Run, if you are familiar with it, is kind of like an add-on portion for Solution Manager, and it's actually it's a chargeable item. It's not a free thing. It's Focus Run. So you might have Solution Manager for technical monitoring, but they're recommending Focus Run if you're going to continue on your landscape that is kind of hybrid. The other thing that the feature, a lot of customers today, we have customers ourselves that are looking at orchestration for, let's say, the change management portion, the charm, and they are not able to do that on Cloud ALM. And they know even Solution Manager is end of life. They are deciding to stick with Solution Manager because they've invested the time and effort into getting Charm to work for their transport management. So that's another area. If you're using Charm, you know, still dependent on your Solution Manager today, right? And then also, if you are in an environment where you are heavily integrated into ticketing, service desk, ITSM platform, although SAP is saying that they will have third-party integration for that, a lot of that is not built in today. It's not quite ready. There's a lot of work. There's not a lot of expertise to do that integration. So if you're automatically handling tickets through, let's say, service desk that integrated, maybe you have an add-on on Solution Manager to ServiceNow, that stuff is still recommended to stay on Solution Manager. All right, so that extendability today, if you are running Solution Manager and you're connecting to multiple things, if on Cloud ALM, a lot of that is now pushed outside of the core S4 environment or BTP applications. A lot of things that you want to monitor that's not available or you want to integrate with is sent over via open telemetry. So you have to do that integration, external integration. So that's a serious amount of effort to get going and maintain and manage as well. So it's not something that you can take on lightly. So you have a lot of these, not just the SAP portion, but you have other ecosystem, maybe full stack cloud environment. Cloud ALM is not there yet, even though they say they support open telemetry. That's a lot of work that you have to really spend time and architect and get to work. The other thing is most customers we know, number 5, is spending a lot of time, obviously in SAP, about, I'd say 50% of processing is jobs or background based. And you may have third-party scheduling packages, workflow automation. Cloud ALM can monitor jobs, but they are not in the vast majority of, I would say, cloud orchestration. So getting the jobs to run, being able to trigger it, being able to orchestrate all of that stuff. Today, Cloud ALM will monitor jobs, but that's about where it stops. And so the ability to do more advanced kind of, I would say, workflow or intelligence around, we call kind of job automation. That's still lacking in Cloud ALM as well. So, but out of the box, you can get some jobs monitored, and but if you're looking for complex business process where you have dependent jobs and things like that, where you need to closely either control or manage, that's still kind of a gap there. Also let's talk about customers today who are mainly, full stack. You've got either cloud, public cloud, private cloud. You have kind of unified across the board in terms of single dashboard. You may have correlation engines. You may have full stack visibility across timeframes. Cloud ALM is not doing that, right? They still pretty much, if you're familiar with Solution Manager, you've got all the metrics there, but to get all the data in a consolidated dashboard where you can correlate across multiple application stacks, it's not there. You can get the chart on let's say user response time, but let's say I want to correlate that with my database or my save point access time, my disk response, all of that stuff is not there. It's not the type of observability that we would expect from a highly correlated kind of observability engine for root cause analysis. Solution Manager versus Cloud ALM, we kind of summarize. We do have a monitoring kind of matrix. It's version 6, and I'll show you can get that if some of you might have downloaded before. We've been able to do this for years now to keep not only SAP tool, but third-party tools, vendor tools out there that we can actually manage to compare and give customer kind of a, here's the lowdown on where areas that you can compare. So as I say, Charm is not ready on Cloud ALM, right? So it's more on the aspects of Solution Manager. You're going to stay there. Some of the areas we listed here, some areas that our customers today, instead of waiting, maybe you are Solution Manager, you're happy with that, but maybe you have a project where you are migrating, you're upgrading, and you want something ready today that will integrate across your change management stack. There are third-party options out there, right? Same thing with ITSM, as I mentioned, the fully integrated. We have customers who are managed by a managed service provider. They may use Solution Manager version that have, the managed service provider edition with multiple end customers. So that's very mature on Solution Manager side, but on Cloud ALM, it's not. So you're going to look into integration with other platforms like Jira, Service Desk in terms of ServiceNow and everything else out there. There are options to do that. Monitoring capabilities, we all know from the technical foundation stuff of monitoring out of the box with Solution Manager, as kind of heavy-handed as it is to manage Solution Manager with all the agents and all of the host agents, all of that connection. It's more mature. You can handle a lot of different stacks. On Cloud ALM, as I mentioned before, it's worked differently, right? You are pumping data. Each system that you are sending data to the cloud has a connection that you actually have to send data over the internet, right? Which is another kind of weird thing to do, because if you think about maybe you have a 30 SAP system, mid to large size enterprise, to send each system's data connecting over the public and sending data to Cloud ALM is still a model where it's not quite, I would say, optimum, if you will, from a security standpoint, and also the data that you're sending out. So every one of your system has to be enabled essentially to have outbound internet capability, and then it's not supporting basic things like if you are getting OS or database, maybe you're doing a cluster environment on-prem, it won't have any visibility into that, right? Because it's sending data through the ABAP stack. Everything is through ABAP. Now, ABAP can read some of the information from database and OS agents, but it's not. If you're down, you can't get to that data anymore because ABAP's not sending that data. So there are certainly gaps in the monitoring on the ALM side. User interface, everybody's aware of what Solution Manager, SAP GUI, all of that stuff. Cloud ALM, as I mentioned before, is all modern UI stuff. So again, that's, if you like something looking pretty and easy and all that, that's their Cloud ALM is ready for you there. But if you are kind of a global enterprise where you may not you may not want everybody to be on Cloud ALM and access that, there is no kind of restriction right now. If you open up and you have access to Cloud ALM, everybody has access to it. The problem there is that some of the notifications coming out of Cloud ALM today is actually coming out of SAP domain, right? So some of our customers make it an important point. If you're getting an alert, they want to come from their own domain, right? So that you don't have like spam filters, maybe filtering it out. That stuff is not clear how SAP is supporting that. All of that is now currently sent through a cloud kind of web URL that SAP provides. You don't have any way to actually mask it or put it in your own kind of domain, if you will. And we talk about the high extensibility and customization before with Solution Manager. That's been around a lot. There's lots of firms that have built extensions or customization on top of SolMan. There's not a lot available for Cloud ALM. So think about Cloud ALM as like a BTP app, right? So that you have what SAP will provide, but from an extensibility, you really got to put in the work if you're gonna make it look like your own stuff and integrate to your own stack. So that's one of the things where you need to kind of spend the time to plan around those limitations. Everybody took on SolMan early days because they say it's free, right? Free sounds good. And then they started investing in the infrastructure and then getting people trained and then having dedicated resource to manage it. So it's technically not free. We actually have a ROI calculator for those that wanted to know how much time and energy and total cost of ownership to do SolMan. That's been out there for several years. We published an ROI calculator, and I'll show you where you can get some of that information as well. Essentially, on RISE or on BTP or on Cloud ALM, you will get a free with your contract, the first 8 gig. Now, what does 8 gig mean? If you run HANA, 8 gig doesn't mean much anything, right? It's consumption, it's logs, it's historical data, it's metadata. So they have a measurement of how much you're consuming. So we took an estimate and say, because it's still early on, we don't know. Some of our customers say they're still on the first 8 gig. We did the projection based on some computation on what we added, like we added several systems, and we turned on a bunch of things. If you're on a small environment, maybe a couple of SAP systems, maybe one landscape for S4, you might be okay for a couple of years. And, again, that data will start growing. I say after like a month or two, we're using about 2 gig of 8. And so you can project out maybe a year, 2 years if you're in a small environment. If you're in a medium environment where you have maybe 2 landscapes, maybe you have GRC and you have S4, and you're connecting to this to Cloud ALM, we're projecting you probably got about a year run rate before you start having this additional cost that SAP will slap on for the next 8 gig. And that cost is variable based on your contracts. There's no public place today to look up and say definitively this is going to cost me this much. So in cloud, we like to think about consumption and utility like fashion. It's not so clear with Cloud ALM, and maybe if you're a large customer, you have negotiated rates and etc., you might get better price, whereas maybe a smaller company would just pay whatever SAP slaps on. And I've heard anything from publicly 20K. Don't quote me on this, but that's some number around the next 8K, 8 gig of usage. And it's not only storage, it's actually egress. So if you are consuming taking data, interacting with the platform, maybe you have integration, etc., that will count towards that 8 gig. And definitely if you're large, so a lot of our customers are, I'd say medium to large. If you're Fortune, say 1,000 companies, you're going to have a large SAP landscape, especially if you've been around for, let's say 10, 20 years on SAP. That's going to be a big workload. So maybe the free tier will only get you a few months worth. And so you got to plan for that cost and when you're going to start getting that extra bill from SAP. So it's not free. If you look at resourcing, training, it's a new tool, right? Anything SAP will give you, whether it's an application like GTS, GRC, or PO, whatever it is, you're going to have to invest the time, train the people, and keep them interacting with the platform. Otherwise, you won't get what you want out of it, right? It's not free. You need to invest that time. So let's look at some capabilities, SolMan versus Cloud ALM. Today, again, in custom KPI land, you can do a lot on SolMan. You can, put out all templates and modify all that. On Cloud ALM, it's really hard. Even if you want to add like, I just want a custom metrics, because, from SAP standpoint, it has hundreds of thousands of metrics. It's not really clear on how I would say I want to expose that metrics today, because it's important to me. It's not very easy to do that, right? There is alert logic today in SolMan. A lot of that stuff can be kind of framework, MAI, if you will. In Cloud ALM, they kind of like, they call it intelligent event processing. We played around a little bit with intelligent event processing. It's a lot of work, and I don't know if in terms of routing. And so some of our customers have downstream, like maybe you have security information and event management scene. That may be a downstream today where you send, let's say, security-based alerts to downstream for analytical. Maybe you send it to Splunk, whatever. That itself is going to be hard in Cloud ALM. If you want to take something like that out, as I said before, it's not that easy to say, maybe I turn audit log on SAP. I want to send all this stuff over to my security kind of platform for downstream correlation or AI processing. That's not so clear to do that, Cloud ALM today. There's embedded workflows. There are guided procedures, on SolMan. You go through the 1 step, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Cloud ALM has some of that. It's not ready. It's not quite like when we went to configure something, it was not like a guided procedure. And I think they're trying to work on that. There are certainly documentation about it. It's just not ready. So there's a lot of that's missing. A lot of things also from what we say monitoring. It's not, SAP doesn't live by itself, right? So it has other environment. You may combine this and that, combine multiple metrics and do some kind of correlated event or an advanced workflow. Cloud ALM doesn't do any of that. And they may have plans for that, but we don't see out of the box what you can do with that. So it's an investment in some of that capability that may come down the line, right? Custom notification. What I mean, custom notifications like this. If you have an alert that comes today and you want to craft the message, even itself, to say something different or unique for your environment, that was, very customizable in SolMan. Today, for Cloud ALM, you got some routing, you got some config where you can click on the metric or the event. And in the Cloud ALM, there's only metric and there's kind of event, right? Metric could be, like a CPU response time. An event might be an alert or something like that. So through the intelligent event routing, you can say, if this happened, then create some downstream events. So that's available there. But you don't really get to customize much. You can kind of route it, but you don't You don't get a lot of overriding on, replace this with this, my custom messaging. For on SolMan, again, love it or hate it, you do have those type of standard, people are used to the UI. On Cloud ALM, there are a lot of tabs, a lot of widgets, it's not unusual. One of the annoying things I find early on working with Cloud ALM is that I keep keeping time out all the time, right? So if you're on BTP, for instance, you logged in to Cloud ALM and maybe you have a dashboard that you like to look at for, I don't know, business process monitors and KPIs. And if you're not there for, maybe half an hour, you time out and you get back in again. It doesn't put you where you were again. Sometimes you re-authenticate, and then you might have 5 tabs open, and now you're starting all over again. So it's kind of annoying. There's a lot of UI dashboard stuff. How do I put this together? As I said before, what if I want a dashboard that has, my main systems availability, maybe some SLA around performance, and I want some correlated chat that, shows me SAP response time, database response time, IO time in one, stack chart. There's you can't do any of that stuff in Cloud ALM. You just get the pop-up of the chat and that's it. And you can maybe change the time range when you want to look at it. But it's very hard to kind of do any personalization right now with that, right? We talked at length about third-party ITSM integration. I won't go into that, but essentially, there's APIs, but think about it. Most technical people who manage the solution manager today, APIs are developer land, kind of almost, right? You got to bring in experts. And I can't really say today that there are many CAM experts out there. So if you want an API against something else, I think SAP is selling consulting for CAM. You can get onboarding if you are a sophisticated shop. You want a big onboarding of, let's say, 50 systems with, let's say, 5 integration scenarios. There's a lot of API related things that I think you need to actually pay for consulting for that, because it's not going to be easy to do that, right? The other one we would talk about is the automation, because monitoring is only the starting point, right? Eventually you want to manage and automate everything. So there are a lot of things that could be automatically handled by detection and then auto remediation. That's really currently in Cloud ALM, there's not a lot of that stuff. You can't trigger. So let's say if I want an alert, and then I want maybe a trigger, an automation of scaling up my systems, etc. That's not very clear on how that's going to be handled at all. Because remember, your system is on-prem, cloud is on cloud. And, if you're sending data over there every 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on the frequency of the data feed coming from CAM, how does that go into tech and automation action for your system on-prem? So it's not really designed like that. How does it reach out and say, hey, this is happening, do this automation action? It can probably launch some other web hooks, things like that, but to reach back onto your system on-prem is not a possibility. Remember, because it's outbound, that's sending data out to the Cloud ALM. So let's go into some more advanced stuff that we did testing on Cloud ALM. So today, if you say the database is down, well, Cloud ALM would just say, let's say you're sending metric every 15 minutes or 10 minutes to Cloud ALM. The app is down, so you're not going to get any more feed. And how do you know if the database is down? Something wrong with my database, like maybe I ran out of space or whatever happened, right? That's very limited. So while it's running, it's fine. You get KPIs, your database, and but if you have an issue, and interestingly enough, recently we found out that a lot of systems hosted on RISE, customers were paying for the minimum 99.7% SLA. And so let's say you have an issue like that. Who's going to help you troubleshoot, figure out the problem? Because Cloud ALM just points you that it's down, right? So then now you're going to depend on the service provider or Cloud ECS from SAP for the enterprise cloud services to go figure out. And that's on some other tool. So doing root cause like that is difficult. If the app instance is down, there is heartbeat. So the heartbeat in Cloud ALM just means that, it's getting data from your on-prem collector, right? So it may say, hey, you're not getting happy. And then also jobs, maybe a job cancel, for instance. If your app is down, obviously the cloud ALM collector running on your SAP ABAP system is also stopped, right? So you might get a cancel alert for a job, but that's after the fact because the app's already down. So I think what we need to do is think about scenarios where it's not going perfectly. It's definitely happening for environments that are, let's say, production highly available. You need to know also what are the workaround when you have an issue where you can't get data from Cloud ALM anymore. So if the whole system is down, obviously there's nothing going to Cloud ALM. There's no way for you to go into the OS or the infrastructure stack or database or even anything on a network to figure out what happened, right? So you have limited root cause analysis, right? Again, so these are scenarios what we find that there could be scenarios where you need to have a backup plan, like on-prem, you just get on the system, figure it out. So in this case, you might just get an early alert that something's not coming to Cloud ALM. You got to go figure out what happened leading up to that point. And until the system comes back, you're not going to get any more new data from that. Several scenarios where we've had encountered in the last several months is that Cloud ALM, again, is under their own SLA. You don't actually have a choice. Like this past weekend, they did an upgrade of some sort. We just got notified, it's going to be down for 3 hours. So imagine you had planned some activity this weekend, maybe a system refresh, maybe something, an upgrade or an add-on or something, and Cloud ALM is down. So you just get an email saying, well, you're going to lose access to Cloud ALM, or you get a degraded performance. Multiple times our BTP instance for Cloud ALM got email saying you got degraded performance, and we actually don't know what happened, right? So maybe several hours later they come back and say, yeah, we found something and blah. So this is kind of an area where if I'm, constantly on the system, I want a monitoring dashboard. Some of our operations team or customers, they fully have a screen all the time of their key SLA and KPIs. And if this thing's down, you're basically going to have a blank screen, right? So again, I think there is a notion that, hey, something simple is provided, it's kind of free, blah, blah, blah. But what happens is that they are in control of management and pushing code every quarter and maintaining this. And so there is an issue related to something. You have to open a ticket to SAP and wait for see what happened, or you get an email and waiting for, like, in this case, there was a 3-hour outage. They sent another email like an hour and a half later saying something else. And then it was 2 hours that was completely down, that we had no access. And some of the availability, you can see, this is actually a screenshot of recently over the weekend here. Sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes has data collected, sometimes it doesn't. So it looks kind of fragmented. I would expect, a very smooth transition of data from our system onto the cloud, but it's not. It's not quite there. All right, let's talk about the kind of roadmap. So in different areas, you will see, now go open up Cloud ALM later, but you will see, in areas of health monitoring, business process, job, all these things. Today, definitely health monitoring, you can get going right now. If you're ABAP on HANA type of scenario, you can get that pretty, I would say, just like anything. If you're new to this, to get up and running, I think we had 4 people in our team who are kind of subject matter experts, basis and technical stuff. It took a while for us to get on, even with all the information that SAP provide, to get up and running, get our systems connected, get the security, get certificates, get the users, import the add-in and doing all this setup. By the time that we got up and running health monitoring, maybe like, say 2-3 weeks later, we start getting some data. Some of that stuff is planned now in I think in Q3 2025, 26 as well. We're getting a lot of more custom KPI, So they're rolling this out all the time. In fact, when you're on Cloud ALM, you get constant pop-ups saying something's coming, something's coming. It seems like constantly something's coming, but you got to figure out what that impacts you. So business process today, they have out of the box for S4. So if you're on S4, like I said, I want order to cash, and they may give you, if you configure that, and they will pull some information from S4 and say you're processing X number of orders, X number of deliveries, and that's what they call business process monitoring. It's not how I would define business process monitoring. It has to be a little bit more end-to-end kind of flow, but that's how they're doing it, and they are going to work on further to define, some of the customer KPI stuff. Jobs I mentioned before, again, job failures, I think there. But there's no kind of ability for us to do things like, let's say, some of our advanced customer, they monitor jobs very intricately and say, I want jobs, these critical jobs, if they start every day by this time, and if they don't start by that time, I want to know about it. And also, if they don't finish by a certain time, I want to know about it because somebody's getting delayed in their processing of the business workflow. So that sophistication is not there in job monitoring in CALM today. So, there's a lot of things there that they're going to try and update as well. We also talked about change before, like CTS integration. In fact, when we try to go set up CTS, it just goes to an error screen and nobody knows what that means. There is a lot of things that are part of, if you do an S4 project, that you depend on today. Again, with CTS or CHARM or etc., you're going to rely on that. So they're going to work on that. I don't know in terms of how fast being able to support things like retrofit if you're doing a parallel landscape project or upgrade, but that's being worked on. Tests, I think they are integrated with Tricentis. If you've got test management where you might have done some of that stuff, they are allowing you today. I've looked through ability to go and say, if you want to see readiness, go and export some of the maybe test cases out of your SolMan. I don't know what it looks like after you actually try to import into CALM or do anything in that sense, but looks like they're partnering up for Tricentis to be the test management side. And documentation, if you're using heavy documentation today, I have customers asking, if I'm going to RISE, I have invested in SolMan doing solution documentation, and I want to keep that, or what does it mean? So I told them just either do a one-to-one migrate of that system, so you keep that. It's not a straight upgrade, and you can move that to the new documentation library, right? So some of that you might have to consider carefully. If your solution documentation, you're going to maintain multiple systems, how do you migrate that content, etc. They also do integration. So obviously integration with Talk SAP is quite important. So whether you're doing from SAP to BTP, the RFC to another like Salesforce and all that sort of stuff. Again, that area is advanced in terms of configuration. You need to look at all your interfaces and figure out, can you actually monitor end-to-end scenario or not? And today they're more supporting on SAP to SAP only. So you have a BW, CRM, and maybe S4, right? I discussed before extensibility in open telemetry. Open telemetry is a new standard for people trying to figure out, can I get some, telemetry data for an app that not currently supported in my source platform? So let's say, hey, if you have an API, you can send me this data and all that stuff. So I feel like this is an area where you're constantly going to need consulting help to figure it out, how to integrate different party platform and how the open telemetry can feed your information. Last but not least, ITSM we talked about also before. The basic API integration is there, but how do you integrate in a way where, let's say I want to open automatically the ticket and then maybe assign to a queue and then hand off, or maybe I have a large change coming for a project where I have a deployment phase in maybe my early phase in S4 conversion. How do I manage this as a full end-to-end ITSM with a project and with multiple change ticket with approvals, things like that? That's definitely not there today in ITSM. I see in the CALM today that they're trying to set up some project structure to do some of that. but it's not clear how all of that integrate into ITSM in terms of end-to-end management for project or change requests. So just to summarize, lesson learned from some of our real-world things is that you really do need to plan this on out, just like any SAP project. If you're going to do Solution Manager for CHAM or whatever, it's a project, right? You got to make sure you get your stakeholder involved. And again, we play around. We say, hey, you know, we're just experimenting, exploring. So it's fine to go explore, but if you're going to do this for real, you need management to buy in on it. It's not free. It's not just open it and click a few buttons and up and running. There is serious investment in getting it to be useful for you, right? So you really do need to plan that from a get-go to make sure you have stakeholder from management who's going to buy in. What am I going to implement? I'm going to do business process. So there is a readiness where you can figure out what you're using today in terms of SolMan, try to map that to some kind of configuration so you have an idea, because none of that is going to be export. So let's say I am monitoring response time today for my users in certain region with specific thresholds. It's not like I can just export out of SolMan and put into Cloud ALM. No, you have to go there. You got to figure out, you can have your giant spreadsheet of what you want to configure, and then you got to go and work on that, right? There's not that easy transition like that. So you basically starting a new project on a new product on a new platform. Okay. And I say for sure, Cloud ALM, if you're going to dedicate this as a platform for your ALM infrastructure, you definitely need to invest in training, because again, with experts, even myself, who spent many years working on this whole monitoring and life cycle and workflow, you know, just navigating the product itself was just like a maze, right? It's not obvious. Things popping up everywhere, and then it times out trying to go back and find out where I am in that. So it's not for one, and then you know, people used to like the guided procedure type of thing on Solution Manager. It's not the same on Cloud ALM. So let's talk about pitfalls. Let's avoid things like, you know, if you are doing hybrid, for sure, I can tell you, you're going to run into problems. And some of these problems you don't even know. There's no notes you couldn't figure out. So one of the things is obviously part of this effort was to try and start a community of people that, you know, are in this space, that care about it and talk about it and issues and you know, maybe find solutions for that. You've got SAP community, but I want to, you know, include, when you talk about life cycle for SAP anymore, it's not just SAP, it's like the entire landscape of like full stack integration. So it's important to kind of keep the conversation kind of independent outside of SAP as well, right? But the complexity of hybrid is definitely there. I mean, we try a basic thing to, let's say, onboard a SAP on Oracle on-prem to get to work on Cloud ALM. We don't get any Oracle metrics, right? And it's like, if you want that, you got to spend the time to configure it. And you're not even sure, is that going to provide me the open telemetry for it? So there's no one-to-one feature comparison that we can see that, hey, this feature definitely here, even if it says available, it works differently. It has different limitations. So I think there's a definitely to understand, do a blueprint phase where you're mapping and see, you know, does this work? This didn't work, and you have to have a plan around that. Again, if you are dependent today on a lot of triggered automation scripts and things like that, using monitoring as the entry point, I think a lot of that will be changed. So if you're going to do that, again, it's a cloud system. It's not going to have the same capability as you had on-prem, right? Unless you have that built-in capability. And also from all of the, I'd say, feature gaps in CHAM, you know, change management. We did a webinar a few weeks ago on change management, transport management, and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of tools out there today, third party, you can use right away, and SAP themselves are saying, hey, you know, go third party, use all of these other providers, because they are kind of not going to handle all that all at once as well. So you have to take those into consideration. Right? I would say it will take us a little while to bring out an ROI calculator, because we have to estimate costs and effort and the cost of ownership. in terms of resources and training and all that stuff, right? Maybe 6 months, a year from now, there's more data when people will try it out. But I think right now that's not there, and it's a little bit of an unknown if you're going to get management to approve that. Estimating all that can be a little bit of a challenge. Lastly, is a little plug. What we do today in IT-Conductor is actually, as a third party, we handle full end-to-end SOAP, which is Service Orchestration Automation Platform. So today we can already provide integration into ITSM. We can do orchestration. We can do monitoring out of the box, full stack, right? No database, no systems that are outside of the scope of what we provide. And as a full cloud platform from day one, SAP Store is reselling our solution as well as a complementary. So we're not going to say, hey, go for SAP tool or go SAP tool. SAP tool will be put out. SAP customers who will use it, and those who don't, will don't. It's always been the case with Solution Manager, love it or hate it. It's a vendor tool that's there as an option, but SAP more and more are relying on partners to provide the gaps where you see an end-to-end solution that you need that's not there today. If the gap is big enough, then you need to start investigating, exploring options that will complement, right? So the complement part is important to make sure that we're in a hybrid world, that everybody works well together in that sense. The entry point for Cloud ALM today, if you go to SAP support, you're going to get this, what is Cloud ALM and all that stuff. And there's a lot of material here to get into. And I'm going to show quickly what we got up and running. But essentially, here's the starting point if you want to think about readiness and onboarding.
This is our test tenant where we have the different systems in our lab. We have some S/4HANA and some SAP NetWeaver systems. For example, we have the monitoring metrics for jobs or ABAP resources, gateway, ICM, some basic metrics for HANA. There's not much information here. You can see the alerts. For example, we have like a hardware key alert in here. So this is also being sent to our emails. In this part, we can set up the thresholds. We can create events. For example, we send the alert and then we set up which are the emails that are going to receive this alert.
Now, just to clarify, right? Right now we couldn't figure out if you try to centrally manage all your threshold, like a global across all your systems. Right now, it seems like you have to go each system and manage each of the metric threshold individually, right?
We have system logs alerts. In this case, we don't have any. But overall, there's still some missing features that we had in Solution Manager before.
So I know Sapphire is coming up next week, and they're probably going to talk about Cloud ALM a lot, but I just want to quickly point out some of the points I mentioned in the presentation. As I mentioned before, if you are heavily still on-prem, they're telling you to go focus run, right? It's not. So it's going to be a dual kind of track thing. It's not going to be like Cloud ALM will take over everything. There's still a lot of areas where large customers, as I mentioned before, requires your own license. So this document's available. They can see the downstream roadmap and when all that's going to be. So, but you can see the focus run is going to be parallel. And I think this is in recognition that SAP is saying, hey, Cloud ALM can't replace everything, that for large customers, we just have a lot of challenges in terms of that functionality. So, and as I said about the third-party stuff, they recognize as well, Cloud ALM is going to provide a lot of the solutions that are more sophisticated in areas in depth. So they call this kind of friends of Cloud ALM, if you will. and kind of like where IT conductors also sit today in terms of the end-to-end kind of orchestration and APM environment. So there is definitely time to adopt and time to kind of assess what's important, where you want to do and who you want to involve. But I think from operationally, yes, if you just want basic monitoring and up and running right now, I think that's, go and explore that, right? And again, you can see this SolMan work map here that they go on straight from SolMan to both of these. So I really don't know from a resource standpoint, if you're saying that, hey, I can do some, but I need to maintain the other as well, what that look like from resource, because it seems like a heavy-handed way to kind of maintain both environment, right? It's kind of complex as well. Could have the resource to do that. But getting back to, I got timeout. That's what happened before. And it only was like maybe 40 minutes and I got timeout. I had to relog back in there. So the first thing you get to when you onboard this BTP, there is a whole concern about user authorization management, all that stuff, onboarding BTP tenant, BTP users, getting connections. So all of this has to happen before you even get to this. Once you get to here, then you can get into multiple phases where implementation. They have operations, which is where we spend the time initially to explore. These are the major containers you get into, and then once you get into each, there's configuration for those. You can get your systems onboarded, landscape. Some of the areas, interestingly enough, if you go to where some of these additional things that you get, you have also a lot of online documentation that's available, but it's not very, it's very light, let's put it that way. And I actually even tried to go say, can we configure additional tool like the transport management? And this is the error, like, what does this error mean? How can I get help for this error? So those type of things, you're gonna hit the snag in, and so it's just like if you implement S4 on-prem and you went to your Fiori Launchpad, there's lots of tiles, but what's behind the tiles is really, really something else that you need to explore. And I think that's kind of why, if you want to set up a little exploration project, it's good. But to go full in, you need kind of dedicated resources. There's no way you're going to get something like this, get the value out without some kind of, real hands-on working full-time, get the value, get configured, get, as much done, and open a lot of tickets because they do allow you to open tickets on this, but I don't know how responsive they are in terms of solving your problems and things like that. But yeah, so I think at this point, I mean, we reach up to the kind of almost hour. I just want to show you our experience and also share some of the experience. And we would love to keep the conversation going and get feedback. If you guys are doing some of this, let us know. We probably have more follow-up later on if some of the more features get released. We might play around with that and might have more detailed deep dive. But at this point in time, I also want to talk about the Q&A to see if there's anything I can address there. Also, we can share the survey. If you have any survey, we can post it there, or the follow-up email. You can give us feedback on the content as well as where you are in this journey as well. I got a question here from Jason. It says SolMan support end 2027. How will you SolMan past 27 while Cloud ALM doesn't have all? Well, really what they're saying is that it will end, but no development. But you continue to use it. It's just not supported. So if you're asking for a bug fix or anything, let's say you found like a bug in the agent framework or something like that, you're not going to get fixed for that. Or you may have a new OS or whatever comes out and it doesn't work quite good on that, or the MAI foundation has a problem. Again, and then you have extended maintenance, right? So extended maintenance, if you are customer specifically requesting extended maintenance, it will add it to your contract. It's not free. So if you do need some of that, where you need to implement something like maybe Charm or ITSM integrate with downstream systems, and you need that, you're going to have to talk to SAP about what the extended maintenance will cost you. So that's kind of the thing there. There are some notes here. You can get to that as well. Okay, I appreciate everybody's attendance today. Today, I'm going to wrap up again. We have posted the survey. If you're able to, give us some feedback on the webinar, the content, that'll be useful for us. So please do that as soon as you can. And then we will be able to plan the next one. Maybe after Sapphire, there will be more news on Cloud ALM, I'm sure. We'll see what they announce, and then we can do follow-up through our blog or communication with the user community, and maybe plan another event out in June or July, depending on when some of those features that come out. Okay, I appreciate everyone's attendance. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful.